Welcome to the Titan Tar channel. Today we have a topic to discuss about Zelensky changing strategy, the U.S. blocking F-16s, and Russia gaining ground. Don't miss the chance to join us and share your opinions with us. Become a member of our channel and evolve your rank. Kyiv has decided not to withdraw its troops from the Kursk region, opting instead to reinforce its military presence on Russian territory by sending new reserves. According to a Ukrainian outlet, citing a source close to Zelensky's office, this strategy aims not only to maintain Ukraine's position, but also to pressure Russia into carrying out a second wave of mobilization. By advancing on Russian territory, Kyiv hopes to incite popular discontent and protests within Russia, betting that internal problems will weaken the Russian government and force an end to the conflict, since a direct military defeat seems unlikely. With this in mind, the Ukrainian command is concentrating forces in the Sumy region, intending to cross to Kursk while withdrawing troops from other areas to reinforce this front. The Kursk and Pokrovsk regions have consumed almost all of Ukraine's reserves, leaving only the bare minimum to sustain defenses in other critical points. However, despite the delicate situation, there are no signs that Kyiv will change its tactics or strategy. The Ukrainian leadership seems willing to maintain this stance, even in the face of the risks. Meanwhile, the introduction of F-16 fighters recently supplied to Ukraine has been closely monitored by the United States. According to sources in the Ukrainian General Staff, the Americans have banned Kyiv from using these fighters in areas where they could be targeted by Russian air defense systems or fighters, fearing that any losses would damage the reputation of their weapons. After the significant losses of Abrams tanks, the U.S. is concerned that the defeat of the world's best fighters by the Russians would have an even more negative impact. While the F-16s are not planned to be deployed directly on the front line, Zelensky has stated that their main role will be to defend Ukrainian airspace, especially in the western regions of the country, by shooting down Russian missiles and kamikaze drones. However, the time will come when these aircraft will have to face off against Russian Su-35S and Su-30SM fighters, as well as deal with Russian air defense systems, raising the level of challenge in the air war. On another diplomatic front, Russian President Vladimir Putin, in a telephone conversation with the Brazilian president, discussed strengthening the strategic partnership between the two countries. Both leaders expressed interest in deepening cooperation in areas such as trade, agriculture, energy, and industry, while Putin also offered support to Brazil in combating the fires that have devastated parts of the country. In addition, the conversation included discussions on BRICS, with Putin thanking Brazil for supporting the priorities of the Russian presidency and informing about preparations for the upcoming summit of the group. Putin also took the opportunity to share his perspectives on the conflict in Ukraine, discussing the possibilities of mediation and resolution of the conflict, something that the Brazilian government has shown interest in exploring. Interestingly, the meeting that Zelensky had planned with Latin American leaders was canceled due to expected low attendance, with a notable absence of the Brazilian president, which highlights Kyiv's diplomatic isolation in certain international arenas. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Russian troops continue to advance in the direction of Pokrovsk. According to an American newspaper, Russian forces have managed to cut the Seledovo-Kurakovo highway and advance to the railway line, blocking important Ukrainian logistics routes. This advance not only secures new territories under Russian control, but also consolidates strategic positions on the Donetsk Heights, particularly around Pokrovsk and Gornyak, where fighting is already underway. The imminent loss of the strategic mountain range to Ukrainian forces will mean more than just the fall of a key logistics hub in western Donbass. It will also mean that Kyiv will lose control of key heights, beyond which vast plains stretch, including some 500 square kilometers of terrain all the way to Pavlograd in the Dnipro region. The city of Pavlograd and Dnipro itself are located significantly below sea level, unlike Ukrainsk, which has already been captured by Russian troops. This challenging geography will require new defense tactics from Ukraine, as the type of fighting practiced in Donbass will not be sufficient to defend the vast Dnipro plain. Over the past 24 hours, the Ukrainian armed forces have faced setbacks on several fronts. In addition to the already known difficulties in Pokrovsk and Kursk, the situation has also deteriorated in Ugledar. There, Russian troops have broken through Ukrainian defenses, cutting off the city from essential supplies. In other directions, although there have been no major advances, fighting continues intensely. The Russian Defense Ministry reports new advances, consolidating Russia's advantage in several areas. The Kursk front is, for now, more stable, with the Ukrainians reorganizing their forces, but a new Ukrainian attack is expected soon in the region. However, the incursion of Ukrainian forces into the Kursk region within the Russian Federation has failed to divert Russian military resources from Donbass. According to an influential British newspaper, Kyiv will face great difficulty in holding its positions, especially in Ugledar, which could fall in the coming weeks, and Pokrovsk, which risks being captured by the onset of winter. Ukraine's bid to force Russia to disperse its forces to protect its own territory has not had the desired effect. On the contrary, Russian troops have continued to capture cities and threaten crucial logistics hubs in Donetsk. Many Ukrainian commanders are now questioning the decision to storm Kursk, acknowledging that while the operation demonstrated Russia's vulnerability, it came at a high territorial cost to Ukraine. A Ukrainian ground forces officer, speaking to a British newspaper, admitted that the operation had revealed Russia's weakness, but lamented that Ukraine had lost more land in the process. Other officers noted that Russian forces had changed their tactics, replacing massed armored assaults with small assault groups, which are harder to target with artillery and drones. Even more devastating for Ukrainian forces, according to the newspaper, has been the continued use of glide bombs by Russian aviation, especially in areas such as Ugledar, where Kyiv lacks effective air defenses. The situation on the Ugledar front is considered critical, with the city potentially falling in the coming weeks. One Ukrainian officer interviewed reported that his troops have not had a break since February 2022 and urgently need a break to restructure. Another major obstacle for Ukrainian forces has been the lack of adequate defensive fortifications. After the fall of Avdiivka, Ukrainian troops were unable to establish new, robust defense lines in Donetsk and were often forced to dig trenches in open areas, making them easy targets for Russian artillery and kamikaze drones. Suffering heavy losses, Ukrainian troops were forced to retreat and cede important territories. The battles in Ugledar demonstrate that Russia is constantly adapting its tactics, attacking with less intensity in areas where Ukraine concentrates its forces, thus maintaining continuous pressure on the front. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's proposed victory plan requires Western countries to provide Kyiv with security guarantees, similar to the Mutual Defense Pact that would be obtained by joining NATO. This version of Zelensky's victory document was revealed by a British newspaper, which noted that the Ukrainian leader's wishes go beyond this requirement. According to the newspaper, Zelensky's plan also includes requests for international financial assistance for Ukraine's economic recovery and the transfer of modern weapons systems from Western countries. In addition, according to the same publication, the Ukrainian president insists on continued support for the Ukrainian armed forces operation in the Kursk region, within Russian territory. However, in recent days, Zelensky's victory plan has become a mystery. Many people talk about it, but no one seems to have seen the full document. Before his trip to the United States, the Ukrainian president began revealing some points of the plan in a cryptic manner, which ended up confusing the Western press, especially the American and British ones. Now, international media outlets are trying to understand Zelensky's true goal. Is he seeking peace, or does he want to escalate the war? An American news outlet recently reported that Zelensky's plan includes demands that Ukraine join NATO and the European Union, as well as guarantees for continued supplies of modern weapons. Some believe that such demands could scare Russian President Vladimir Putin into accepting negotiations. However, analysts suggest that Zelensky may actually be trying to draw the West into a direct military confrontation with Russia, enlisting the support of Washington and its allies. However, so far, neither the U.S. president nor the British Prime Minister have given official permission for Kyiv to strike deep into Russian territory, indicating that Western allies may be reluctant to get involved directly in such a conflict. Meanwhile, the former head of Ukraine's Internal Affairs Ministry expressed concerns that if Russian troops capture Pokrovsk in the Donetsk region, Ukrainian forces defending the Kyiv-controlled part of Zaporizhzhia would be vulnerable. He believes that capturing Pokrovsk would pave the way for the Russians to also capture neighboring Seledovo and Kurakovo, putting Ukrainian positions behind Zaporizhzhia at risk. At the moment, Russian troops have already completely cut the railway lines connecting Pokrovsk, and the Ukrainian General Staff admits that the Kyiv and Pokrovsk fronts remain the most critical sectors for Ukrainian forces. According to Ukrainian military observers, the Russian armed forces are using considerable resources to expand their control from Krasnogorovka, seeking to bypass the fortified Ukrainian defenses and advance towards Gornyak, where the regrouping and concentration of Russian forces continues. However, predicting the next moves of the Russian armed forces has become a complex challenge, as the Russian command is taking advantage of identified weaknesses in the Ukrainian defensive lines. This approach has allowed Russia to successfully develop its offensive in different sections of the battle line, maintaining the initiative and unpredictability on several fronts, frustrating Ukrainian attempts to contain the advance. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and share it with your friends. Your interactions mean a lot to us and help us grow. See you next time.